Awesome. Well, Jeff, welcome to the InRoads podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me. We have so much to cover, and I'm excited because it's not just about what you've done and the amazing things you've accomplished, which we are going to hear about, but really want to get to the heart of who you are and the character that you've had and the things that you've experienced that have made you who you are today to be able to achieve the things that you've achieved. So welcome, and thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to take you back to being 5 years old. If you were driving in a car right now with your 5-year-old self and you're headed down the road and you're having a conversation with your 5-year-old self, what do you think your 5-year-old self would be most surprised by about your career and where you are today?
Wow. So 5-year-old self would have been shocked that I would have became a professional athlete because that wasn't in the cards. So growing up in our household, speaking about being a professional athlete was like, I don't know, cussing.
Really?
It was so far from like what any type of aspiration or goal that my parents would even allow me to set, because in my parents' mind, and I think it's reality.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a long shot. And I was a good athlete, but they wanted me to focus on academics. It was, mom was a school teacher, dad was a naval officer, super focused on academics, getting her grades, and becoming an aeronautical engineer. Like that
Wow.
was
That's
it
a big
was like
difference.
from the path, like from a very early age,
Yeah.
that was the path. And so to had a NFL career, played 10 years, that certainly would have been shocking.
Especially with some of the heights that you had. So run through your pinnacle points there, like some of the best moments.
Best moments: playing football at Notre Dame, drafted in the first round. At one point, highest paid center in the NFL. Those are all things I kind of joked once to my business partner. I was like, I was the best in the world twice. I was being drafted first and then, highest paid. And that itself is certainly accomplishments, but there's some of the things that I'm sure we'll get into that are, even higher on that list now than those. But from a just pure professional career, my initial career as an athlete, those would probably be the highest points.
So looking back, knowing that was how the household and the culture and the upbringing was, I'm sure that they were proud of you, and I'm sure that they were really excited to see where everything turned. But was there a point where you had this self-identity shift and you realized that this maybe not have been your path, but it was the path that you were gifted with and that you worked really hard to strive and achieve? And was there any kind of conflict within you because you might have felt that would have been the last thing that you would have expected or they would have expected?
No, it wasn't ever a conflict. And everything kind of just moved so fast, right? In a way it moved fast, in a way it moved extremely slow. But how it moved fast is that we were never really prepared for the next phase.
Yeah.
Right. We started getting recruited heavily in high school. That was a shock. It was like, what is this? Like, what's happening here? And then you go to Notre Dame and still just don't, even at Notre Dame, it's still not in the cards. We're still not even thinking that. We still think that being a professional athlete is a long shot, right? And it just kept sneaking up on us to the point where even on draft day, didn't expect to go in the first round because of my position, and ended up going in the first round, completely shocked. They sent the plane to come get us. I didn't have a suit. Like it was so unprepared, right? And it's just because we're naive, and at the same time, it was just happening so fast where we're just rolling with it, And my parents, first and probably last time they'd ever been on a private plane, it was like an experience in itself for them, just going and being a part of that. And that's just how it kind of kept going. So it wasn't ever a point where we're just like, man, it just didn't work out like the way that we wanted it.
Right.
Like, I mean, it
worked out the way.
Yeah, it worked out the way that it did.
Yeah.
And not only that, it was, beyond our wildest expectations. I had always worked hard. I'd always loved athletics, loved working hard in athletics, but it just wasn't something that we were banking on happening.
Right. So if you were to have one of your best friends in the car, this little mythical car that we're driving down the road, if you were to have one of your best friends, how would they describe what you do today for work?
A lot of my best friends, I swear, like when I put out something on, some type of post or media, they're like, now I kind of understand what you do, So I think a lot of them would say that I help people with their finances in some way or fashion, right? And then on the professional side, and then on the philanthropic side, I help people. I help young people. And really, It's really interesting. A lot of it, talking about the DNA and what's happening kind of past transitioning into the future, a lot of it has to do with, I believe, has to do with me being an offensive lineman. And what I mean by that is an offensive lineman, really, they're really working for others the whole time. You're working to protect the quarterback. You're making a hole for the running back. You're protecting and creating opportunities for others. Right. And so that in itself, I think, is a little bit of my DNA that is just extended into different levels and different areas of my professional life and obviously my philanthropic life.
It's very thematic, the core of, and that goes exactly to what is interesting, because when you talk about who you are and how you go about life, the things that we do and the roles that we play, the character and the virtues that you have, if you are aligned with your authentic self, that's the attunement point. And so if you were to take a look at that, that's your theme, and then you went from pro athletics and then you're now moved into helping people with finances, I would have to think that there's some kind of moral internal GPS, some kind of compass inside you that's driving you from a virtuous perspective. So how would you describe the characteristics or traits that got you along this journey to here?
So I think first and foremost, extremely, extremely disciplined. That comes along with being an athlete and if you're wanting to be able to compete at the highest level, there's a lot of those things that without the discipline, really everything else falters. And then I think, extremely focused and diligent, also comes along the lines with being disciplined. But, most importantly, I think having an awareness to be able to sacrifice and put yourself almost second, for the greater good. Yeah. It goes back to being an offensive lineman, right? And I don't want to make it like our whole talk today about being about an offensive lineman, but really it was such a big part of my life. Yeah. And helped shape, really how I look at so much of the world. Yeah. And how and my place in the world. That piece of it is, vital to my success.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've gone through a period of seeing so much success in that part of your career, taking those themes of who you are, your character, and the purpose that you have, and now doing what you're doing in the business world, how was that shift from sports to entrepreneurial life and into the business?
Yeah, it's competing, right? So in sport, it was competing at a very, very high level. In business, it's competing too. I mean, it's a competition. Yeah. And the score is obviously, the money you make for others, the way you improve others' lives, your family's lives, everybody around, and it's that competition and really just doing it the right way. Right. It's, I think there's a lot of people that unfortunately make a lot of money that, in my opinion, probably don't do it the right way. Don't lay down there, at night and put their head on their pillow and feel good about what they're doing. Yeah. Deep down core inside. Yep. That's important. It's important, because at the end of the day, I have, and a lot of people have, I have two little boys that are watching me every step of the way. Yeah. With my sons. And it's important for me to show them how to do it the right way.
So when you say the right way, how expand on that? What do when you lay your head down at night and you feel good about it, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think, so I think that if you approach things with righteous intentions, regardless if someone accepts it well or not, if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're doing it with righteous intentions and you're doing it along, really kind of the path of, not to make it super, spiritual, but almost the path that like Jesus or God would take. Like that is something that you should be able to feel good about. Yeah. And if you're thinking about raising others and doing things that can improve, everybody around you, your whole circle. Yeah. That's what, in my opinion, is really kind of doing it the right way.
Now, do you think that this is part nature, part nurture, or where do you think, because there's a lot of people out there that will often wonder what the right decision is. They get very conflicted based on either external pressures or expectations or cultural implications. And I think sometimes it's hard for them to really zone in on what that compass, what that direction, that GPS is telling them to do inside. So with that, where do you think that these came from? Did they already exist, or were they cultivated through your experiences?
It's mostly is cultivated in childhood through good parenting. Yeah. A good childhood of being raised the right way. There's, probably, thank God my mom has passed away. She'd probably go to jail for a lot of stuff she used to do to me, but it was good stuff. I mean, it's like, the saying, you straighten a tree when a tree's young, right? Yeah. And then you can't straighten it once it's old. And so I was straightened a lot.
Put it that way. Yeah. So we won't talk about how that tree was straight. We'll just leave that part
we can leave it out, leave that part out.
That's all we need to know is it's straight now.
But you know what though? That's where it started, and it continued to be massaged and continued to be molded into, really where it's become today throughout, really a lot of stops in my life, in high school with coaches. Coaches in sport has always been a central part of my, kind of upbringing in life. And it's really, continued on through where, to my staff, my employees, everybody that works with me, like I try to approach it in a very similar way. And so I think that there's some natural characteristics that are born in everybody that, you might want to seek good rather than seek evil. But at the end of the day, I think that really how you approach life, a lot of it is really developed over time.
Yeah. And I think that the conditions and the environments that we put ourselves in, but also the boundaries and things that we say no to. And I can imagine with what you've seen and experienced, you've been in situations where you had to make a choice. I'm either going to hang out with this crowd or hang out with that crowd, or I'm going to stay more disciplined and not stay out late so I can wake up next morning ready to, rock and roll and go. And how would you say that you've established your boundaries to be able to protect those virtues?
I think a lot of it also too goes back to parenting, right? I was the kid in high school that wasn't allowed to stay at other kids' houses. I was the kid that wasn't allowed to stay out past 10 o'clock at the max, even on the weekends, and so that carried on. I kept that same approach, even though my parents weren't there in college.
Yeah.
Where I just approached it differently, and it was just the way that I prepared myself, continued to develop and continued to evolve was really shifted on, kind of that snowball that started at the top of the hill with my parents, where it was a small little ball and just became, kept growing, kept learning new lessons. A big part of it is really driven by that.
How do you differentiate? Because you have a quiet confidence about you, like a humility, but you're obviously really solid and resolute in who you are and what you have to offer. And I think that also requires a certain amount of inner strength. How do you think that you've been able to maintain, aside from everything that's happened around you, because that's all external, right? On the internal side, how have you been able to maintain that connection to yourself, that confidence, but not have it turned into arrogance or ego?
So, everybody's heard this in a different way. My dad used to always beat it into my head, 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
Listen. And so when you're sitting and I sit with folks and we're in meetings, I'm oftentimes, hey, you're not contributing. When I contribute, it will mean something, and so it's going to be super meaningful. But at the end of the day, we're all part of the same world. We're all part of this whole thing. Some folks might shine in a different way at different times in their lives. And so, at the same time, you can really kind of turn and have a bad day, and you need to be able to show up in those days as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not great to boast and be bold and flashy on your good days. You need to be able to keep it.
It all evens out. It all evens out sometimes.
Absolutely.
So the idea that there had to have been times where it wasn't always ideal, or times where you might have either failed or you might have felt like you weren't your most secure. Where were parts along your journey, or even just one that you think was a roadblock or something that you didn't expect to go through that was really, really hard, and what happened with that?
Sure. The first time I had to deal with something like that professionally, whether, along my entire path, it was in football, is when I was released by the Buccaneers. And so I was released by Tampa Bay. Greg Schiano, it got brought in to be the head coach, and so our head coach got fired, Raheem Morris. And Greg wanted his guy, he wanted his guy from college. And so that was the first time that I had ever, at any level, been rejected.
Wow.
Of sport, right? And so, and I still remember I had business interactions and dealings while I was playing, and I was on a business trip in Bermuda when I got the call from my agent. He said, "Hey, I think you're going to get released by the Bucs." I said, "What are you talking about?" It called me from left field. I was a 4-year captain. This was my team,
right?
And so I called our general manager, Mark Dominic, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Hey, are you guys cutting me?" He said, "You should probably come in." I said, so I knew right then, So I was like, all right, I'll be on a flight tomorrow, and I'll be back in. But that was hard. It was hard to deal with that. And, I know that a lot of people probably dealt with it a lot earlier in their lives, right? With rejection at some level. But really up until then, this was my 9th year in the NFL.
Wow.
I'd never not started. I'd never been a backup. I'd never, that was just not part of it. And so to deal with that was challenging. And really at that time in my life, because I think you'd almost you probably don't deal with rejection well, regardless of when it happens.
Right.
But for me to go that long, and then to deal with that. And so that was probably the most challenging part, and then you can certainly take it into the business space, right? Sure. Where we've had misses, where we've had to close restaurants or different bars or whatever it is, or, close different businesses because it just didn't work each of those times. And even getting cut by the Buccaneers, it's a learning experience. Right. And it was. And I learned, and I was reminded, I always, felt like I kept a good eye about this, but I was reminded that the NFL is a business. And that's what it is, and frankly, players are commodities. And so you have to deal with that and understand that and accept that and to continue to deal with it. The cool thing about that experience, though, is that the way that it was handled by leadership.
Okay.
And because I knew that was a tough decision for Mark. I was close with Mark, Dominic, the GM. And so I knew that was a very, very uncomfortable, regardless at what level. It sucks firing people. Yeah. And that's what was happening there, and so it was challenging for him. I saw how he handled it. I took from that ultimately how I like to be able to handle it in the future as well. Every experience, if you have the ability to look at it in a certain way, is a learning experience, regardless if it's happening to you or if you're just experiencing being part of it.
And it sounds like in the way that the conversation may have happened, there was a lot of dignity and respect and empathy there. And so then you were able to emulate and do that back, even though you were on the receiving end of the information. And then you carried that forward as you moved into business with your leadership roles and how you treated people. I think that's such an invaluable lesson because you can't always control the outcome. And from his perspective, as much as he may not have wanted that to happen, it's almost like he can't control it because he's got to protect the entity, and you can't control it because there's not much you can do to change his mind at that point. So
yeah, and not to get too deep into what was in his mind, because we didn't go too far into it, but I don't even know if he necessarily agreed. This is the new head coach that they were brought in to take the team in a certain direction. So you got to, there's a saying, the chef's got to buy their groceries to cook the meal, right? And so you got to kind of a little accept it in a way. And so for me, he even tried to do me a favor on the way out too. And this is part of it as well, where he was like, "Hey, we're not going to cut you today. We're going to try and trade you." And that's a big deal because what he was trying to do is get another team to honor my contract. Mm-hmm. In the NFL, all the contracts are not guaranteed. Most of the contracts are not guaranteed. Sure. So you have to deal with that. But anyways, it was cool to see and a great learning experience to see like really how leadership should handle transitions and difficult ones. And he could have easily answered that call when I called him and said, "Yeah, we're releasing you." Instead, he said, "Hey, no, you should come in because I'm going to do this face to face." Where we're in a kind of a world nowadays. We're in a world nowadays where people are getting fired over emails, getting released over emails, and doing things like that. It's getting fired over a Zoom call. And so that's part of because you don't ever know, you might come across that person again in the future.
Oh yeah,
and you want to be able to make sure that you parted on good ways, so
Absolutely.
that if something comes back around, it's still good.
And having gone through the line of work that I've gone through with the HR management and running the organizations from that perspective, I remember when I hit a really hard termination, a mentor of mine told me, you really don't know what's next for people. The best thing that you can do is trust that all of your lives have a plan and that you treat them with respect and dignity in the moment you have them. And that's your responsibility. And it is about how things come back and how people can end up back in your life. But it sort of released the guilt and the pain that comes with being on either side of that, because you just entrust that things happen for a reason. And every single time that I've seen, and I've had to go through that a lot, it's always come out that way, where you do run into somebody later on, or it does come back to where there's an appreciation for how you handled them when delivering bad news. And it is a challenging place to be in. If you were to, I see a sense of, you have this experience and you have something that's unexpected. It was almost like you were able to disassociate your ego from that situation, which I find fascinating because of all the things that you've been through and gone through. That trait of being able to see it for what it is and make it simply that, a moment in time, an experience in time. What are you going to take from it? How are you going to move on? Is really critical. And that's very rare. And that's very, very hard, I think, for a lot of people to do. If you were to look at the idea of what you would want to define success to be, everybody defines those differently. And we're talking a lot about the characteristics and virtues and traits, but how does that translate to success?
Oh, well, first, let me go back and say, I just to clarify, it still sucks. getting cut, so I took a good lesson from it. So I'm not going to say it didn't bother me, but for success, and define success and take these lessons and to be able to convert them into success. I think ultimately if you can always approach life in general, is that you're just going to continue to learn.
Yeah.
And be open to learning, be open to even not just even learning new data, but learning new perspectives.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. As you're educated and informed and, be able to keep an open mind about, hey, you might not be looking at this the right way.
Right.
And if as long as you can question yourself in a healthy way, but question yourself in a healthy way to say, hey, like be open to hearing other perspectives because, just because you feel like this is the right way, you were raised the right way,
Sure.
you were raised this, or like to be able to keep an open mind and learn, that I think is where you can take a lot of the pitfalls and challenges and things like that, where you can take those and help those usher your way and find a way to success.
Yeah.
To be able to help shape that. And as long as you're open to learn, that's the biggest piece. I
think it's interesting because you say in a healthy way, and that reminds me of there's a lot of times when people are growing into new roles or new levels that they have this sense of self-doubt and questioning yourself, or that imposter syndrome of not really feeling like you deserve to be where you are is very different than questioning yourself from a healthy paradigm and perspective.
Absolutely.
Where do you think people get the idea or the definition of success wrong?
There's a lot of superficial, at the top surface success, what people feel like is success. I mentioned something a little bit earlier about being the highest paid center in the NFL. That can be taken in certain ways, right? But the way that essentially you are at that level, the way that you are judged on who's the best is who's paid the best, right? Yeah. And so the reality is that I think, again, it goes back to, kind of your self-check at the end of the night. When you're laying your head on your pillow, do you feel good about what you're doing? It doesn't necessarily have to be making like the most amazing amount of money or, to be, having all the trinkets and toys and all that stuff. It's, do you feel good about what you're doing? And because if you feel good about what you're doing, you found success. Yeah. And as long as you continue to feel good about it, and as long as you continue to grow and go into that way and not, continue to progress and still feel good about it, that's success.
That's sticking to the core of what your purpose is and who you are, and not selling that out for anything external or what society might say or think that you need to be or do. What would you say from this standpoint? Where are your roads taking you? What's next for you?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to expand in what we're doing we have a life insurance firm that specializes in premium financing. We're going to continue to grow that and build that out. And we enjoy that. You got 2 offices between here and New York and works extremely well. Yeah. And then on the philanthropic side of things, it is, for our charity is called the Faine House. And we're just continuing to assist and help kids, uplift them and encourage them and support them, and it just really help them, max out their opportunities and do what they can do. And that's what, our focus is, and it's what it's going to be. And we're really enjoying where we are right now with that.
So if you were to be at the end of your journey, looking back in the rear view, to be able to say, I know that I did life well, what would that look like at the very end?
What would that look like at the very end? That would look like hopefully a long time from now. But it would be, seeing my kids grow and develop into the young men that I hope they'll be. Yeah. Really leaving that is, I think that's the most important gift that you can give is for the next generation, for them to be able to pay it forward to, and for them to, live very similarly or at least where I felt like is a very righteous life and doing things the right way. I think, for us to be on the professional side is to help a lot of people and really secure a lot of futures and help just give a lot of security to families and what they have in the future. And then with the kids at the Faine House, I mean, if that is something that I think will be, if we can, I tell people all the time, it's the most rewarding thing that we do. If we can do what I believe we can do over time, that will be a give back, because all of those kids will be tremendous contributors to the local communities and broader communities. And that is something that at the end of the day, for the amount of people that have rallied around that as well in our community, it's a really big thing that I believe will help, really make me feel good about, hopefully done something the right way.
End up. And it's hard to be able to say when you're looking at something like that, the inspiration that it gives you and the community that exists today, but then what it does do for the future, that in itself is that legacy work that is going to far supersede all the titles and all the money and all that stuff that we just talked about. So that's some pretty incredible work. Thank you for being with us and talking about your journey. The whole core content that we talk about and what we're trying to do is really take some of these lessons that people like you have learned and inspire others. So if you were to have one word or one sentence or any kind of parting advice for somebody listening that was digging deep in a situation that they may have been able to relate to some of the stories that you've shared, what would that be?
I mean, I don't know if it's one word, but I think, if everybody would just think, going back to just feeling the meaning of success, of feeling good about what you're doing, if, not being afraid to reinvent yourself, not being afraid to take a chance and to start over into a new direction, so that you can wake up and lay down and then wake up and feel good about what you're doing. That's the most important part in life is, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. If you don't feel good about it, it's not going to be fulfilling. And
Love
so
it.
that would be it.
So true. So true. Great advice. Thank you. Well, thank you for being with us, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.